form. We will kind of pause for a couple more seconds as I'm watching the participant count inch upwards or creep upwards. We're at about 58 right now, and it's still going up pretty quickly. So we'll just keep holding tight for a couple of minutes as we do give people a little bit more time to continue logging on. Hopefully, folks are staying safe and healthy during this time. The fire situation continues to look dire. Looks like the participant count is slowly leveling out. We just had another batch come in. We're at about 76 right now, and it's holding steady. So let's go ahead and get started. We do have some opening slides that I think will give a little bit more time for people to start logging in as well. So first off, thank you for joining this afternoon. We know everyone has a very busy schedule, and really thrilled that you are able to join us. Not necessarily thrilled over the situation that's driving the need for this workshop, but recognizing that your attendance here is really part of a collaborative effort to help ensure that we can protect our water supplies and we can kind of implement the state's water rights system as it's currently designed. My name is Eric Echtel. I'm the Deputy Director for the Division of Water Rights. The purpose of today's workshop, there's an agenda here. We'll do some high-level introductions, but really there's the focus is to describe the curtailment orders that were issued to the Upper Russian River watershed and to some right holders in the Lower Russian River watershed, to describe what's in those orders and to describe how we are asking people to respond. We'll describe that response process and how you can go into fill out an online form that we've asked everybody to discuss. And then we'll talk a little bit about what happens if people don't respond and available resources, including water board staff and local resources that can help people fill out these things and provide compliance with the orders so far. Shortly we'll do an introduction, but before we go any further, actually no, let's do the introductions quickly first. There's a number of board staff that are here today and they'll present shortly. With me, I have Julie Rosardo. She's the Assistant Deputy Director for the Division of Water Rights and oversees our permitting and enforcement section. We have Robert Cervantes, who's the section chief for our enforcement program. We have Philip Dutton, who is a unit senior who oversees the cannabis permitting section, but he has been redirected for drought and oversees kind of the implementation and response to the curtailment orders. And then we also have Sam Boland-Bryan, who's the section chief that has been taking point on developing the Russian River regulations, the curtailment orders, and doing a lot of the outreach and facilitation for a great number of meetings that we've had over the last year or so. That largely covers the welcome and introductions, but before we go on to item number 2, we did want to take the opportunity to see if there are any elected officials or tribal representatives that wanted to offer a few words at the beginning before we move forward. And if you do, please raise your hand. And it looks like Supervisor Linda Hopkins, you have raised your hand, and I want to turn it over to you to kick this part off.
I just want to say thank you so much for hosting this meeting and for providing information, especially to Lower Russian River water rights holders for whom this is a new order, as the previous orders had been focused primarily above Lake Sonoma. So thank you just so much for being here and for bringing the whole staff team to really listen to and respond to the community. I'm very grateful, and just want to say welcome to all of the folks who are here listening today.
Great, thank you. Are there any other elected officials or tribal representatives that would like to offer short remarks? All right, not seeing any other raised hands. Let's go ahead and get started with that. I'll turn it over to Sam Boland-Bryan, who will walk through the curtailment order responses. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Bullenbryan with the Division of Water Rights, as Eric said, and I've been overseeing some of our activities responding to the drought conditions in the Russian River watershed. Today, I'm going to talk about how to respond if you received a curtailment order and kind of some of the process there. Before I get into that, I just wanted to talk briefly about the background of the curtailment orders. And so the State Water Resource Control Board adopted an emergency regulation on June 15th to respond to the drought conditions in the Russian River watershed. Both the upper Russian River and the lower Russian River experiencing really exceptionally dry conditions this year. And so as part of that emergency regulation process, the board adopted the regulation, and then it got submitted to the Office of Administrative Law to do a review there before becoming final. And those were the steps that led up to issuing the curtailment orders earlier this month. Orders were issued to all water right holders in the upper Russian River on August 2nd. And in the lower Russian River, we issued curtailment orders based on kind of our analysis of supply and demand on August 10th. And so not everyone in the lower Russian River received a curtailment order, but only those where there was not enough supply to support diversions under their water right priority. And so if you're on this webinar, it is likely that you received one of these curtailment orders and may have questions about kind of what to do next. And so the curtailment order was fairly brief. It had kind of two main sections, a background, and then kind of what were called the findings. And then there's a section that says it is hereby ordered. And so the hereby ordered section is kind of what's directing, giving you instructions on what you need to do. And it kind of lays out when the order becomes effective and then what must be done to respond. And really the main pieces to note are, if you receive a curtailment order, is to kind of, it's an order to cease diversions or stop diverting water under that water right. And so the other pieces there, and really the critical piece that we're going to overview today, is to talk about this curtailment certification form. And that is the primary kind of piece of, and first piece of information to let the Division of Water Rights know that you've received a curtailment order and you're kind of confirming that you're ceasing diversions, or that you need to continue diverting under an exception. And we'll get into those in a minute. But really, after receiving a curtailment order, these are the big first two steps. And so respond to the curtailment order. It says within 7 days is what the order says. We recognize we're past that 7-day window now, but it's as soon as you can. If you weren't able to make it within the 7 days, it's important to kind of still try and respond as soon as you can, so that we know that you've ceased diversions and that you've received the order. And so we have an online form to provide this response, and it's available at the link on this screen. And just as a quick side note, these slides will be shared after the webinar. So we will kind of post these to the website. And so your login and password for this form were provided in the transmittal letter. And if you're having trouble with that login, please contact us at our hotline or email address that I'll share at the end of the presentation. So complete the form. It's a couple of pages, and then you can get a copy of the form once you've submitted it by downloading a PDF option. And this kind of confirms that you've ceased diversions or whether you're going after an exception. And everyone that received a curtailment order needs to fill out this initial form. If we could go to the next slide, please. And so kind of after that, looking in, if you still need to kind of a source of water, pursue alternate sources besides surface water. And then kind of evaluate it. Do you need to pursue an exception to the curtailment? And the exceptions are kind of laid out in the emergency regulation. It's really if you need to continue diverting to meet minimum human health and safety needs. And what that how that's defined is in the regulation, and we can get into that a little more in the question and answer. But really, there's a couple of options for forms there. If your diversions can continue at a rate such that you're not using more than 55 gallons per person per day, so for those minimum human health and safety needs, what gets submitted is a form through that same portal, and that can is a certification. So as soon as you submit it, you can kind of continue diverting if you're under that 55. If you need to divert more than 55 gallons per person per day, or you cannot quantify, your use on kind of that per person basis, then there's a petition available. And so that petition is a request that needs to get approval by the Deputy Director for Water Rights, so Eric, who you saw earlier, before proceeding to divert. And then finally, the last form available through the same portal as the link on the previous page is if you have a non-consumptive use. So there are certain types of use, like for hydropower, where it doesn't reduce stream flows. Those diversions can continue, but they still need to kind of submit the form to certify certain information, verifying that it's non-consumptive. Next slide, please. So these are when you log into the website, these are the three forms you'll see for these exceptions. And so there's the Russian River Health and Safety Certification Form. There's the Russian River Health and Safety Petition Form. And note the difference there is if you're under 55 gallons per capita per day, it's a certification, and you continue diverting after you submit the certification. If it's over 55 gallons per person per day, you submit the petition as a request to keep diverting. And then the last form is this Russian River non-consumptive use exception form. So again, once you log in using the ID and password provided in the letter, or provided by board staff, if you give us a call, you'll log in and you should be able to see these forms and submit them. Next page. So once you've submitted and you've either received approval of your petition or you've submitted the certification, you continue diversions for minimum human health and safety. It is possible that if kind of pursuing one of these exceptions to curtailment, that you may receive reporting requirements. So this is kind of additional information to submit to the Division of Water Rights about the diversions, so that we can kind of keep track of how much is still coming out of the river, and also to make sure that people are kind of staying within the bounds of what is, a minimum human health and safety need. What we're considering right now is sort of a monthly form where people could come back in through the same portal and submit monthly amounts of diversion. However, that could vary by water right holder. And the rough plan right now is those that receive one of these exemptions would kind of, once each month is completed, they would, by the 10th of the following month, submit information for how much water they diverted in the previous month. And this would all be done through the same portal that we showed earlier. Next slide. And so kind of the last step after receiving a curtailment order is that we are, hopefully it rains next month a lot, but at some point it will start raining and we'll be making adjustments to the curtailments. And so particularly for the lower Russian River watershed, that there's different amounts of demand and different amounts of supply in each month, and we'll be comparing those supplies against demands and updating who is curtailed and who is not curtailed. And so we won't be sending out additional hard copy letters to people that have received a curtailment order. We'll be updating the status of the curtailment order using our website and our email distribution list. And so here's a link to our main website, and it's at the bottom of that website is where you can sign up for the email subscription. We're also hoping to have a map and kind of a few different ways to see the status of your water right. And so hopefully there's a color-coded map and a list of the water rights from those various sources on the website. You should be able to tell the status of your water right as we kind of go through the the rainy season. And so this is really critical, is just kind of keep tabs on the status of your water. And that's the fastest way to know when you can start diverting again and when the curtailment order has been lifted for your water right. Next slide, please. And so this is a note on kind of the process with the State Water Board. If you believe you received the curtailment order in error, or that doesn't apply to you, there's a process called a petition for reconsideration. There's kind of provisions for how and what applies under a petition for reconsideration. And so that's the kind of the regulation sections that you can look at. The most important thing to note is that a petition for reconsideration has to be submitted within 30 days of the date of the order. And so for the Upper Russian River, that petition for reconsideration needs to come in within 30 days of August 2nd. And then for those in the Lower Russian River, that petition for reconsideration needs to come in within 30 days of August 10th. Next slide. And now I'm going to hand it over to Robert Cervantes, and he's going to talk a bit about kind of the enforcement process and how that works for these curtailment orders.
All right, thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Cervantes. Hey, Kian, let's scroll to the next slide, please. All right, thank you. My name is Robert Cervantes, and I'm the Water Rights Enforcement Program Manager. I'm here with Julie Rosario. She was introduced earlier. She's the Assistant Deputy Director of Water Rights, who oversees the permitting and enforcement branch. So the photo we're looking at right now was taken yesterday by one of our engineers. It's the upstream face of Coyote Dam. And it's become an all too familiar image for Californians, and it's forcing all of us to take a hard look at the overall value and management of our natural resources. Before we jump in, I want everyone to know that we acknowledge how challenging it is to juggle your job, your business, so close to harvest, kids going back to school with the uncertainty of COVID, and having to deal with our drought emergency regulations. It's our pleasure to host this workshop in response to community demand for additional clarification and assistance. We stand ready alongside our local partners to provide you with the help you need to get compliant with the order. We will beat this drought, working together to balance the needs of the community, the environment, and industry. All right, next slide, please. All right, let's talk about our enforcement strategy. Our main drought enforcement strategy goal is to ensure compliance with curtailment orders, ensure compliance with other existing state water board regulatory requirements, and to refine and verify critical data upon which the state water board relies and makes informed decisions during this drought emergency. Our strategy covers 4 key areas: prioritize and inspect, seek additional information, collaborate and investigate, and optimize compliance. So let's dig into the first one. So prioritize and inspect. So we intend to efficiently deploy our drought emergency resources and prioritize the largest diverters in the most drought impacted areas for on-the-ground curtailment order compliance inspections. We have also begun prioritizing and scheduling inspections with diverters who have not yet responded to the order. We're going to seek additional information where it's needed. The division may issue an order seeking information that is reasonably necessary to assess compliance with the State Water Board's emergency regulations. Collaboration and investigation is a huge part of our strategy. We take complaints from the public seriously, and we rely on our partnership with the community to call potential violations to our attention for further investigation. The division encourages the public to submit complaints, particularly those related to illegal diversions or curtailment order violations to the Cal EPA Environmental Complaint website. The website contains all the information you need to file a complaint, along with other features related to our complaints program. This is an opportunity for folks who have made a good faith effort to comply to level the playing field with those who are not. We'll provide a link to this webpage at the end of this presentation. Last but not least, we want to optimize compliance. In addition to assessing compliance with curtailment orders, the division also intends to examine diverter compliance with other existing regulatory requirements. For example, compliance with the State Water Board's water measurement regulations, also known as SB 88, the Russian River frost protection regulations, or our annual water use reporting requirements. Division staff offers technical assistance to water right holders who need help correcting their annual water use reports or need additional guidance on other alleged violations. Believe it or not, this is one of the most favorite aspects of our job, helping folks one-on-one to get on track to correct their potential violations. Next slide, please. All right. Some of you here may have already received an inspection request from us. We've mentioned how important curtailment response is. That's why we're here. One of the primary factors in identifying folks for inspections is not responding to the order. I want to make this clear today, if it isn't already, that the orders are in effect now, whether we contact you for an inspection or not. Submitting your curtailment response is an enforceable condition of the order. We're already well into the implementation phase of our overall drought emergency effort, and you can see the 4 parts here on this slide. Curtailment orders were issued to diverters in the upper and lower watersheds earlier this month. Most diverters did not submit their curtailment forms within the 7-day reporting period. We expect all diverters who received the order to submit the required form. Staff is currently evaluating responses for continued diversion under acceptable exceptions, use of other sources that haven't been curtailed, and identifying diverters who received the order but have not yet responded. If you have not yet responded, you can expect an inspection request from us soon. Inspections are ongoing and will continue most likely through the month of September. Again, the easiest way to avoid an inspection request from us is to complete the required curtailment form. Our inspections mainly consist of observing points of diversion and places of use to evaluate compliance, as well as gathering information like when your last diversion was, alternate sources of water that are not subject to our curtailment. Our staff does not make determinations of violation in the field. We understand harvest is right around the corner, so we will make the most efficient use of each other's time. After we conduct an inspection or a desktop investigation, we'll determine if curtailment or other regulatory violations have occurred. We may draft an administrative civil liability complaint, we call it ACL for short, to assess penalties based on the violations we allege. If we send you a draft ACL, you can either pay the calculated penalty or request a hearing within 20 days. Hearings are held by the State Water Board's Administrative Hearings Office. We strongly recommend all diverters comply with the curtailment order and get those response forms submitted so you can avoid ACLs. With that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Sam Warner, for the main event. Sam will walk you through the online response portal step by step so you can feel more confident about how to do it correctly. Julie and I will be available after the presentation to address your questions or concerns. Thank you for your time. Let's roll that video.
tutorial. Hello, everyone. This is Sam Warner with the State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Water Rights. And today I'm here to present to you all a tutorial on how to fill out the Russian River Curtailment Compliance online response forms. A couple of disclaimers before I get started. This video does not supersede the order or the regulation, and it's not a replacement for reading the regulation yourself, reading the letter that we sent, or for viewing our FAQ. The purpose of this video is just to provide some technical assistance and show you all how to fill out the online form. With that said, let's begin. The first thing you need to do is go to the website where the form will be filled out. That website, as you can see at the top of my screen here, is public.waterboards.ca.gov/WRinfo. And you can copy that either from the letter you received, or you can write it down from the top of my screen right now. Once you're here and you see the same things that you see on my screen right now, we begin by clicking the button that says Login here near the beginning, near the center of the page. Now you should see the login screen. There are two pieces of information we need to enter. We need to enter our water right ID in the section here that says Login. And we need to enter our password, which is also known as our reporting identifier. Both of these pieces of information were provided on the letter, and they're the same information that are used to log in to the RMS reporting system that is mandated for water rights reporting every year. Now, in this case, I'm going to use an example water right, and so I'm going to enter my login username, which is B032244. And the password that I have for this, I will enter All right. Now, there's a small few users who may have not received the correct password on their letter. They may have received all zeros. And if that's the case, you should just use your RMS password if you have it, or you can contact the division and we can get you set up with your correct password. Once you've entered your information, go ahead and click this button here that says Login. The very first time you enter the portal, and only the first time, you should see a page that wants you to associate an email with your water right ID. So in my case, I'm just going to enter my email, which is samuel.warner@waterboards.ca.gov. And we'll only have to do this once. Once we've entered our email, we should see the water user dashboard. And on this page, we'll have all the forms that are available for us to fill out. Please note that for this tutorial, I'll use form and survey relatively interchangeably, so don't worry about a distinction there. Now, the form that everyone needs to fill out and the form we'll be filling out in this tutorial is the top form here, the Russian River Curtailment Certification Form. The middle three forms are forms for those who are seeking an exception to curtailment, either for human health and safety purposes or for non-consumptive use. We have some additional tutorials that are available for those forms. The last form is for those who have obtained those exceptions and need to report their continuing diversion. Now, to start filling out a form, we want to go over to the right side here and click the button that says Survey next to the form we want to take. The button that says Summary can be used afterwards to show a summary of the answers we provided to that form, but clicking it won't allow you to fill out the answers itself, so we need to click the button that says Survey. Once you do that, you should be taken to the introduction page. Now, the introduction page has some useful info, but for the sake of brevity, I will be skipping it for this tutorial. I highly encourage you all to read the information when you take the survey yourself. To proceed to the next page, we click the button that says Next. Now we're on the Acknowledgement and Certification page, and we have to begin by selecting which of the following checkboxes here in the beginning applies to us. We've got three options. Either we can certify that diversion has ceased in accordance with the curtailment order. We can say that we're continuing to divert under one of the exceptions, and we will provide the associated certification. That's filling out one of those other forms I mentioned. Or we can certify that we're continuing to divert under a different right that's not subject to curtailment. If we select this option, we have to use this box here below to specify which water right we're continuing to divert under, but you can leave this blank if you don't pick option 3 here. For the sake of example here, I'm going to pretend that I'm a small domestic user who's continuing to divert their 55 gallons per day for minimum human health and safety purposes, and select the second option. Now, scrolling down, we've got a question that says, if you're continuing to divert under sections 878 or 878.1, which is what I'm doing here, select one of the following options. If you're not, if you've ceased your diversions, then you don't need to select one of these boxes. We need to say whether we're continuing to divert for non-consumptive purposes or for human health and safety. So in this case, I'm going to select this checkbox. And lastly, they ask if there are any alternate sources of water being used, and if so, please describe in the box below. In my case, we've got no alternate water sources, so I'm going to type in no alternate sources. However, you could also just leave the box blank. Now we can proceed to the next page and click next. And please note that your answers will only be saved if you click next or previous. If you type something in and then you close your computer, the answers won't stay in the survey. Now we see a page where there's the option to upload attachments. The majority of users shouldn't have anything they need to upload here, but if you feel the need, perhaps you're using an alternate water source and wanted to upload documentation of that, you could do so on this page. I'm going to leave it blank and click next to proceed. And now we're on the submission page of the form. As you can see, the form's quite brief, and it really is possible for an individual user to complete this in 5 to 10 minutes on their own. If you're not technically inclined, you may need a friend or family member to assist you, but the majority of users should be able to complete this by themselves with not too much trouble. Now I'm going to enter the name of the person signing. In this case, I am the right holder, Sam Warner. And the relationship to the legal right holder. In this case, I'm going to enter that I am the right holder. However, you could fill it out for, say, your brother, in which case you would put family or brother, whatever is your preference here. Now we need to certify under penalty of perjury that all the information entered in this form is true and correct. This is an important box to check, and please do keep all your answers honest. If you need to return to any of the previous pages and double check or change any of your answers, you can use the previous button here to go back through the form. But we've answered everything the way that we want to, so we're going to go ahead and click Finish and Submit. All right, and now that we do so, we see a summary that shows all the answers we put in this form. We can see the checkbox here that we've clicked, and we can see that little bit of text we entered. If we want to save our answers as a PDF, we can use this button here that says Show as PDF to download a copy. It's not required, but if you want to have it for your records, you're welcome to do so. We can also use this button that says Return to Dashboard to go back to the water user dashboard. If we are a user like this example, where we also need to fill out an additional form, say that we're seeking that exception for minimum human health and safety, we can go back to the dashboard to be able to access the other forms here. However, for the sake of this tutorial, and if you are ceasing to divert under the curtailment order, then at this point, you are done. I want to let everyone know that if you have any issues filling out the form or have any questions about what to put in any of the fields, you're welcome to give us a call or an email at our drought line and drought email box. Thank you, everyone, for being here with me today for this online tutorial. If you have any questions about how to complete any of the other forms, please see the associated tutorials.
Hi, everyone. So that was the first video that we're going to play, and that video is what will be posted on our website for future reference as well. The second tutorial we're going to show is for those seeking a human health and safety certification. So this is for those that are under the 55 gallons per person per day use amount. And so Philip is just lining up the second video. We will play that one, and then we have a couple more slides, and then the rest of the time will be for question and answer. So Philip, if you have that next form or next video.
Hello, everyone. This is Sam Warner from the State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Water Rights, and welcome to this tutorial on how to fill out the Russian River Human Health and Safety Certification Form. Now, this is another in a series of tutorials we're doing on how to fill out all the online forms associated with this Russian River curtailment. So if you have questions about how to fill out the main curtailment form or any of the other surveys, please see the associated video. A couple of disclaimers before I begin. This video does not supersede the order or the regulation, and it's not a substitute for reading the letter that you received, reading the regulation for yourself, or viewing our FAQ. It's just intended to be a tutorial to help show you how to access and use the online form. Now, there may be some information if you've seen any of the other tutorial videos that is repeated here, so please bear with me. The first step is to go to the website where we will be filling out the form. You can see it here at the top of my screen, and it's also printed on the letter that you received. The address is public.waterboards.ca.gov/WRinfo. And when you type that into your browser, you should see the page the same way that you see it on my screen right now. And it says at the top, Water Right Form and Survey Submittal Portal. I'll use the words form and survey interchangeably here, so don't worry about a distinction there. Now, the first step is to log in. And so we're going to go to this button in the middle that says log in here. And here we see a page that asks for our login and password. And our login is going to be our water right ID, and our password is the same as our reporting identifier for the RMS yearly reporting. But both these pieces of information should also be printed on the letter that you received. If you aren't able to log in or the letter that you received has all zeros for your password, you can go ahead and contact the division through phone or email, and we should be able to help get that sorted for you. All right. So first, I'm going to log in with my example water right, which is B032244. And I'm going to enter the password. Click log in here to complete the process. Now, if it's the first time that you are logging in to this online portal, you'll have to enter an email to associate with the account. But if you've been in here before, say you entered the or you filled out the curtailment certification form previously, then you should come right here to the water user dashboard. And on the water user dashboard, we see all the surveys that are available for us to take, and we can select the form that we want to fill out. For this video, we are filling out the Russian River Health and Safety Certification form. This is the second form here. Now, the purpose of this form is for folks who are continuing to divert 55 gallons per person per day for human health and safety purposes under the Russian River curtailment. And so those purposes, for example, might be drinking water, flushing toilets in the house, water coming out of the faucet, things of that nature. Now, if you need to, if you want to divert more than 55 gallons per day for that same human health and safety purpose, it is possible to fill out a health and safety petition form. However, that's not going to be covered in this video itself. So to fill out the form, we go over here to the right and click the button that says survey. The button that says summary will show us a summary of all the answers we've entered in the survey already, but it won't let us fill any out, so we need to click the button that says survey. Now we arrive at the introduction of the form, and there's important information here that I encourage you all to read when you fill out the form, but for the sake of brevity in this tutorial, I'll be skipping it. To proceed, we click the button that says next. Once we do that, we'll see the checkboxes on the acknowledgement and certification page. Now, it's important that you click all these checkboxes or you won't be able to proceed to the next page. And these are all the things that you must acknowledge that you understand and that you are applying in order to have this exception. I highly encourage you to read them all in detail when you take the form for yourself, but for the sake of this video, I've already read all of these, so I'm going to check all these boxes. I agree that I'm not going to divert more than 55 gallons per person per day and the other such acknowledgements. There's also some important notes here at the bottom, and all of these mirror what you should see in the regulation as necessary requirements to continue to divert for human health and safety purposes. Next, we have an attachment page. Now, not everyone will need to attach anything, but if you have any files that you think are important for us to see associated, you have the ability to attach them here. In this case, I don't have anything that I think I need to attach, so I'm simply going to click Next to proceed on to the next page. And here we are at the end. So this form is relatively simple. It's mostly just acknowledging the requirements that go along with this human health and safety exception. And so here we need to enter the name of the person signing. Going to enter my name, Samuel Warner. And the relationship to the legal right holder. For the sake of this example, I am the right holder, so that's what I'll enter. But if I were, for instance, the husband or the right holder, then I might enter husband or spouse or something of that nature. Lastly, we're going to certify that under penalty of perjury, all the information entered in this form is true and correct to the best of my knowledge. And this is an important step here to take note of. If I wanted to go back and change any of my answers, I could use this previous button to return to a previous page. But I've done everything the way that I want it, so I'm going to go ahead and click Finish and Submit. Once you do that, you'll see a summary of all the answers you put in so far. We can see here all these acknowledgement checkboxes and that I haven't uploaded any attachments. If we wanted to save a copy for our records, we could use the button that says Show as PDF. And if we want to return to our dashboard, perhaps to take another form, we would click this button here that says Return to Dashboard down at the bottom. Clicking that returns us to the dashboard, and we can see the other forms available to take. Perhaps I had diversion reporting that I needed to do, or I took this form and still needed to fill out the main Russian River curtailment certification form. If you have any further questions about how to use the survey or about what you should enter in the survey box itself or about your specific case, feel free to give us a call or an email. If you have questions about the other forms, you can view their corresponding tutorials. Thank you all for being with me today for this tutorial on the Russian River Human Health and Safety Certification Form.
Okay, and as we pull the slideshow back up, just to say it again, those videos will be available on our website, as well as videos for the other online forums that are in that portal. And so the last few slides we have are just some links, where else to go for the information we've covered today. Really, the main website is that top one there, and that's sort of the hub where you can find a lot of the other informational resources, including the videos and a copy of this presentation and a fact sheet. And we have also posted an example of the curtailment order for both the Upper Russian and the Lower Russian and the related transmittal letter. The next link there is where to go to sign up for that email list I mentioned earlier. And the next link is covers some of the information that Robert touched on. This is where you can find more information about how to submit a complaint. They have also set up a database where you can query to see what are the existing complaints and kind of what has been submitted by others. And so really a lot of valuable information there, and please disseminate because we do want to, any information helps us, but specific and actionable information is even more helpful. Lastly, there's our contact information. So Russian River Drought at waterboards.ca.gov, and a phone line where you can leave a voicemail and someone will call you back. If we can go to the next slide. There's some folks within the watershed that have graciously said they can be available to help people fill out the forms. So there may be some that don't have access to a computer or reliable internet. And these folks have kind of volunteered to say that they can help do the form. And so if you are really having trouble or can't get to a computer, one of these folks, the county farm bureaus can help you out, or the Mendocino Flood Control District, or Adrian Garialdi with the Russian River Confluence. So reach out to them if you're really having trouble with the forms and kind of don't want to contact us. But we can't fill out the form for you. It's one of the limitations there. So we can give you a guidance, but yeah, these may also be locally available resources. And you go to the next slide. That concludes our presentation and transitions us to the question and answer. I really appreciate everyone sticking with all the slides and the videos. But we are here also to answer all of your questions about what we covered or anything else related to the Russian River drought response. The logistics for asking questions are to use the chat feature within Zoom. So please, as you think of your questions, type them in there. Julie Rosardo will kind of manage that queue and ask the questions to me and Robert.
Great, thank you, Sam, and really appreciate everybody's time here today. So I wanted to address one of the questions right away overall about the workshop. We are recording it and we will provide it after the workshop is done. We'll provide that online for you. We'll post it on the Russian River Drought webpage as well as the Water Board's Drought webpage. We do realize, and folks have contacted us, that some of them were not able to attend a workshop during the workday. We totally get that. We want to make sure that this video is something that all folks who received a curtailment order are able to access. So with that, the first question that we have is for Sam regarding the online forms. So we have a question here with somebody with multiple water rights. Do I need to fill out the certification form for each one of my water rights?
Yes, that's the short answer.
All right, and then what about the human health and safety exception forms? Is it the same story with those? Like you need to fill out one for each of your water rights?
So for that circumstance, it really depends on which water right you plan to keep using for the health and safety exception. So based on kind of the size of your water right and the other parameters, such as what uses it can be applied to, some water rights are only for irrigation purposes. Some water rights have a season that is kind of only constrained to a certain time period of when the diversion can happen. So kind of take a look at the parameters of your water right and what can cover a health and safety, a human health and safety use, and kind of go accordingly. And then if you still have multiple water rights, I would say choose the most senior water right first, and you can just submit a certification under that water right. If that water right is not big enough, essentially, to cover all of the needs, so say for a community, then start filing under multiple water rights.
All right, thank you. Another question regarding forms. Somebody said that they were never able to get the show as PDF to work, and the PDF never loaded on their computer, but they ended up just printing the summary information. Is that okay?
Yes, that information is for, the PDF is for your records. But if you're still having a technical difficulty there, I would recommend reaching out via email to Russian River Drought at waterboards.ca.gov, and one of the staff should hopefully be able to get you a PDF. Okay,
but by the time you're getting to that, that screen where you're showing the PDF or you're printing your own summary, you've already submitted it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great, thanks. That's really helpful. Another question is, what is the current rate of response to these curtailment orders? I know, we had the lower Russian River ones went out, got mailed out August 2nd, and the upper got mailed out August 2nd, and the lower got mailed out August 10th. So how are we currently looking as far as our rate of response to these?
So for the upper Russian River, the response rate to that curtailment certification form is around 65%. And so as Julie mentioned, those did go out a little earlier, so August 2nd. The orders that went out August 10th, we have a response rate currently of around 38%. So we obviously like to see that get higher, and we both have kind of been steadily increasing, but obviously we'd like to see them higher. But people are responding, and hopefully this webinar can help.
Absolutely. Great. One more question for you. This is specifically regarding the exception for human health and safety. Would you please clarify residential use versus commercial use for this 55 gallons per day?
So that clarification is covered in the emergency regulation. There's a definition for minimum human health and safety needs. And there's a few different kind of categories that could be included there, and it provides those in the regulation. That includes domestic uses, so drinking water, fire protection. It's not as applicable in this, but for hydropower, for kind of grid stability, for the electrical grid, air quality is another one. And so if there's requirements to meet air quality using water, so those are all minimum human health and safety needs. Commercial is not called out as one of those items. And so I'd really refer back to those definitions and kind of take a look at that. And then if you think there is something that is included, I'd encourage you can submit the petition and kind of describe how it falls within those cases, and we'll be able to kind of provide you a more specific response.
Okay. All right, so lots of questions on the forums, which is good. I'm glad we are getting these questions answered, and I'm sure if one person has a question, others can definitely benefit. What is the current process of looking at the human health and safety exceptions? Like, do they need, what kind of approval process are they going through? If you can just kind of explain that in general.
Sure, so there's those two pathways, the certification versus the petition. The certification is a little more streamlined, where the process is the person or the right holder can continue diversions after they've submitted the certification. The other is a petition, and the process there is that they submit the petition through the portal, and they include any attachments as supporting documents. The division staff will kind of review those materials. If it's fairly straightforward as an approval or a denial, we'll issue something from Eric, the Deputy Director for Water Rights, as a letter submitted sent electronically, either approving or denying. There may be certain cases where it needs further evaluation or a closer look, or it's more complicated, and it is possible that we may issue an interim authorization while we're reviewing it, which is possible under the regulation. And so those are the main pathways. For the certifications, where it's possible that we will acknowledge receipt, and as part of that acknowledgement that could be sent as electronically via a letter, we could include reporting conditions. And so that's an authority provided by the regulation. So for either a petition or a certification, expect a letter sent electronically, and that would could include reporting requirements. Another thing we're looking at is it possible to use that water right during this time period for health and safety needs? And so if it's a circumstance where the water right is safe for irrigation, and it's now kind of being reapplied to a different use that isn't covered under the water right, we aren't able to approve those because there isn't a basis for the water right, or the underlying water right there. So the use of the water right for minimum human health and safety needs kind of needs to be allowed under the actual water right, and it's the curtailment order that's kind of changing things. And so I just wanted to note that approving an exception, we can't kind of create a new water right. We're just kind of allowing these exceptions to the curtailment orders.
All right, great. I'm gonna ask a few questions of Robert, and then I may head back to you for more questions, Sam. Okay, so as far as the actual enforcement goes, you talked a bit about water rights complaints that people could file, and we've put the link out there for folks to do that. What kind of information should people include in their water right complaint?
Good question. Thanks. Yeah, so the information that we're looking for is the most detailed information that you can provide us such that we can viably follow up with an investigation. So let me tell you what I mean by that. Dates, times, pictures, videos of what you believe to be an unauthorized diversion, locations, names of potential violators, things like that. Anything we can use to investigate from our desktop initially to get us on the right path toward evaluating your complaint is what we're looking for. Visit our webpage. It has all of what I just said plus more regarding the complaints program.
All right, great. All right, so the next question we have, and this is regarding the forms, but then also there's a bit of question in here, I think, as far as how we're going to handle it with enforcement. So here's a potential situation. Somebody submits the response to the order that they got, and then they realize they made a mistake. So if they go in and answer, say they answer the survey all over again, like they start a new one, is that an acceptable approach? Will that be considered, an amendment? And will the board's enforcement staff be able to just look at the most recent one and be able to see that there was an effort to submit updated or amended information?
So I'm going to take a crack at that question, and then Sam Warner, if I get it wrong, please chime in. But my understanding of the form and how it works is that you cannot start a new separate form, but what is possible is to go in and amend a previously submitted form. And so if someone does make a mistake, they will be able to kind of go back to that same kind of interface that Sam showed in the video. And then they will be able to, again, click on submit the survey, and it will show their answers that were previously submitted. So it is possible to go in and change an answer that way if an error was made. We are kind of periodically saving all of the responses. And so what we're going to try and do is maintain a record of if changes were made or not. And so we'll still have that tracked, but I think if it's clearly explained that an error was made, and there's a place for notes in the submittal. So just note that clearly when you're putting it in the revisions, just add a short explanation of what happened and why you're changing the form. Because what we are able to also see is when the form was most recently amended, kind of like a timestamp. And so that'll all be information that'll be helpful, but if you do make a mistake, please do, fix it.
All right, excellent.
Yeah. And I just want to, jump in for a moment. We understand that, you're typing and you're answering these forms. It's a little stressful. It could be late at night. We get it. If you intended to enter 55 gallons, per person per day, and you put 5,555 gallons per person per day. I mean, that's something that, we'll definitely be able to evaluate on our end and not issue, penalties based on that. We would definitely contact you first before, we took enforcement action on something like that.
Great. So this is a question for both or either of you. So a question about future lifting of curtailment orders potentially. So looking ahead to this fall and winter when it rains, and we are definitely hoping that we get a lot of rain, all of us here in the state. when it rains, how soon will curtailments be lifted, or how would folks know when curtailments would be lifted if it were to rain enough?
I can take the first crack at that maybe, and then Robert can fill in. We hope to lift curtailments as quickly as possible once a rain event starts and we see, changes in stream flow. And so that is actually part of the motivation for using our website and email distribution list for updating information about the curtailments, because that will be much faster than sending out the letters in hard copy. And so we'll be updating our kind of analysis of supplies and demands within the watershed. And then based on those updates, kind of trying to immediately update our website with who can start diverting. And so that will be, more senior rights will be starting to divert sooner. But hopefully we get enough rain that we can lift all of the curtailments, but we will be identifying who can start diverting and when. So please tune into the website and that email subscription list I mentioned earlier. Robert, anything to add to that?
Yeah, that is the method. And, I guess the thing that I could add is that, we'll be sharing with your shop and, I guess publicly, if we need to, some of the findings that we're seeing out there in the field, if the data from the gauges or what have you don't seem to match what we're actually seeing on the ground, maybe that's something that we can evaluate and discuss, together as a group, with the community like we are right now. But, the method is the method, and it's in the emergency regulation. So that's what we're going to go with.
All right. Another question regarding this 55 gallons per capita per day. If you host many people on different days of the week, for example, how do we keep track of the 55 gallons per capita per day? Or is that not allowed as a human health and safety exception if your people count is varying? Does that question make sense?
It does. And
okay.
It is, so it goes to the question of how is the 55 gallons, and it's the per person part of that equation calculated. If you have have guests, and I know that there's some tourism and things like that population can be kind of included in how you're calculating the 55 GPCD, or gallons per capita per day. And so for the certification, you are the one certifying that you're kind of doing that analysis of seeing how much water you're using under that water right. Where it may come in is, so I mentioned some kind of reporting provision. So if required to submit kind of ongoing information to the Division of Water Rights, if you get an exception, information like that can be included. So it may be that we just ask you to report out each month how many people, what's the total amount, and is that kind of staying under this 55? So that's kind of where we may get into that, is just as you kind of report on how you kind of continue diversions. But yes, you can factor in a variable population.
All right. We have one question here regarding curtailments. In effect, how are you then measuring the effects of these curtailment orders? In other words, how are you seeing potentially changes in the watershed? What other things are you looking at to see whether or not these curtailment orders have had an effect?
I think to start there, I would point back to the board meeting on June 15th. We have that posted. I think it's on YouTube, but it's also on the State Water Board's main website, where we give a staff presentation on kind of the intent of the regulation and like really the driving need. So, and then related to that, when we, what the board's formal action was to adopt a resolution that resolution describes kind of some of the intent as well of the regulation. But as you boil it down for the upper Russian River, there's a real risk that Lake Mendocino could be empty by the end of the year. And so I think it's slowing the draining of Lake Mendocino is an important outcome of this regulation. And so part of the metrics of success are looking at, how are we doing in terms of, losses in the river, storage at the lake. And then in the lower Russian River, it's also, are there flows available for those senior right holders that still have a right to divert water? And so I think you can think of that as kind of what we're looking at here. Robert, do you have anything to add to that?
I think, at the risk of, going down a rabbit hole, with this potential question, I think that was a sufficient answer. And, I think that as the rainy season, whatever it materializes to be, I think that these conversations will solidify, as we move forward into the season. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right, looking at the remainder of the questions, we do have some very specific questions that are coming in for very specific water right holders or very specific on the ground situations. For those, I'm going to have staff follow up one-on-one so that we can really in detail answer the question you're asking and really make the most use of our time here in this workshop. So if we don't get to your specific question, don't worry, we will follow up with you on each and every one. All right, this next question is for Robert. So the question is, what is the enforcement section doing to check in on the larger diverters within the Russian River watershed, as far as, going in the field or contacting them? I think there's just some folks who want to make sure that we've got the eye on those larger water users.
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's one of the initial efforts that we engaged in the enforcement section, is scheduling site visits with the large diverters to view their systems, their active points of diversion, ensuring that they are diverting in accordance with what either their petitions they submitted or their human health and safety submissions that they made to the portal. I think it's a huge it's of huge importance for us to shore up the use of water by the largest diverters, most impactful diverters in the watershed, so that at least we have an idea of what it is they're doing relative to the smaller diverters who are also going to be subject to this curtailment and receive inspection requests as well. And we did want to make sure that we were comfortable with the compliance actions of the largest diverters. So we are visiting them first. We inspected many of them this week. It will continue into next week, along with some other diverters that are nearby some of their facilities.
All right, great. Looking at all these questions coming in, something about the water rights forms again. If we have filed our water rights already, and I'm assuming that's like somebody who may have already reported their annual water use and diversion, because that definitely was, that's an ongoing thing, but definitely has been a recent activity. So if they've already filed, say, their annual water use reporting, and they are not currently diverting anyway, they have zero, like they're just not diverting, do they still need to respond to the curtailment order?
Yes, it is great that diversions have ceased, and this is the way to document that you've ceased those diversions is through the curtailment certification form.
Okay, so just because they reported on the annual water use reporting, which is our annual process that everybody's familiar with, doesn't mean that they could just not respond to this one. This is a separate one. and everybody needs to be responding to this.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification. And I'm really glad we're getting these questions because like I said, if you have a question, somebody else may have the same question. All right, question about if we have a place online that people can check to see if their particular water right has been issued a curtailment order.
Yes, so the website that I mentioned on the previous slide, if you go there, there's a few kind of drop-down bars as you scroll down the web page. One is for the upper Russian River and one is for the lower Russian River. And we have lists there posted of who has received a curtailment order. And our plan over the next week or two is also to post a map, to kind of an interactive map to show, on that map, which rights are curtailed or not. And just, I realize I'm saying upper and lower Russian River, and I didn't explain it at the beginning. The upper Russian River is that part of the watershed upstream of Healdsburg, essentially. So where Dry Creek joins the main Russian River, so upstream of that. And the lower Russian River includes Dry Creek and everything kind of downstream of Healdsburg. It's like a place to think of. So we have lists posted on our website, and then we will update those lists as we go forward. And we're working on having an interactive map as well.
All right, next question's for you again, Sam. So it's kind of a bigger picture question about water management in California. Folks, I think, understand this is all due to this drought emergency situation that we're in. But what steps do you think are being taken to minimize impacts in the future? So what kind of potential activities to improve our water resilience, like increasing storage or gaining efficiency in water use?
I think there's a lot to that question and a lot of efforts underway within the Division of Water Rights, but also across various state agencies. And a place to start to kind of look there is the governor's resiliency portfolio, where they kind of outlined a lot of actions and strategies on how to respond to future drought. And so I would start there, but just recognize that there isn't going to be kind of one fix. I mean, raising Lake Mendocino, for example, I know is something that's been under discussion for a very long time, and it would be quite a complicated project. So I think, there's a lot of discussions locally, also at the state agencies. But I'd also point to, particularly in this watershed, the passage of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, that there are important groundwater resources in the watershed, and coordinating kind of how the river functions and what's being done to manage groundwater could be a big step forward for water users.
Great, thank you. So we have another question about human health and safety exceptions. So the question is, if after you have filed your certification form and you continue to divert water for human health and safety, then you have some other sort of unexpected emergency, like a break in your water supply line, or some sort of emergency outage, or something that causes a disruption in the system. Is there some sort of step that folks should take to give us information about what happened, particularly with systems that are a pressurized system that might have occasional operational failures or breaks?
So I would say reach out to that email inbox. Staff are kind of always watching that, and that's a starting point. There is a provision in the regulation that there's something really urgent and unexpected that can, diversions for that reason can be authorized. And so I think the first step, though, is to keep us kind of apprised of the situation, and that can be best done through that email inbox. Once you're having these kind of specific instances or circumstances, we can kind of help answer your question. That kind of gets into enforcement too, though. I don't know if, Robert, you have anything to add there.
I guess that if we find during the course of an investigation that more water is being diverted than was reported under a health and safety exemption, we would consider that to be a violation. We would investigate it further, I guess, is my answer to that. We would investigate inconsistencies before we took formal enforcement action.
All right, great. So while we wait to see if there are any additional questions here, just one last question for each of you, for Sam and Robert. Sam, what is the one kind of last big picture thing that you want to leave folks with as we conclude this workshop?
It might be the same thing Robert said. Please follow the curtailment order. The circumstances are dire, and it is a severe drought in the watershed, and so kind of information is critical for board staff as well as we figure out how to respond. And some of the kind of critical pieces of information are your responses to that curtailment certification form, and then also the complaints process, so that, I think most people really do want to do their best and comply, even, these are hard circumstances, but there are some, that we'd like to spend our time on rather than kind of focusing our resources in the wrong spots. And so helping through the complaints process can really help us get through the drought.
All right, and then Robert, I'll switch it up a little bit for you. What is something that you or your staff have seen in the field this last week since you've been out there? I know you showed a picture. Just kind of give us just a high level what you're seeing in terms of in the field.
Yeah, so the large systems that we visited this week are complicated. And I think that it's that complication of system operation versus like actual hydrology, water that's available to deliver through the system. There's a huge discrepancy. And what I mean is not so much in reporting, just in terms of operationally what the community needs are at this moment versus what the system is able to actually deliver. It's a huge challenge, and we understand that, and we're doing our best to at least explain what the drought emergency regulations are all about to even the large system operators. Oftentimes, the large systems have management that are working with us on the policy level, but then you have the operators that are actually, turning the head gates and turning on and off the pumps. They're somewhat more disconnected from what the decision makers are doing with us. So it's a good opportunity for our staff to go out there and build those relationships and educate, the folks at the operation level, which oftentimes those are the folks that deal with the people in the community, at the customer level. So we're finding that there's some disconnect in information flow for some of these larger systems. For the individual sites that we've visited this week, we haven't found any violations of the curtailment order, which is nice. Folks really are doing their best to comply. They're operating in good faith. There are other more obscure regulations that we have that aren't well understood. For instance, our water measurement regulations, SB 88. That seems to be a big blind spot for folks. And so that's a wake-up call for us, for our shop, to do a better job of publicizing what that's all about.
Okay, great. Just a couple more questions here. Should people be expecting to get a response when they submit that response form online? Should they be expecting to get a response back necessarily? Is that part of our process?
It's not currently part of our process to confirm if someone submitted the curtailment certification form. However, we are planning to post online kind of the list of who we've sent the curtailment orders to and who has responded. And so you were able to check that list to see if, you know, your water right is there. And so that will be one way to confirm receipt.
That'll be really helpful too. And I think that will be helpful too as well. As I asked this last question, can I ask whoever's doing our presentation to go back one slide, I think it is, to the 4 watershed folks who offered? Yes, perfect. I want to keep that up there as we do our last question here. Really a shout out to these folks for offering their time and assistance and providing help for people getting responses into their curtailment order. And as you've heard, each and every person needs to respond to the curtailment order if they received one. All right, so I think our final question here. This is about Water Code Section 5100. You can't have a Good Friday without talking about Section 5100. So 5100 defines diversion as including subterranean streams flowing through a known and definite channel. Is there such a map of these channels in Alexander Valley?
So there isn't a map per se for the entire Alexander Valley. How these kind of determinations have been made is kind of case by case. And for those that aren't as steeped in the water code as that question asker may be, the regulation, but also the state water board's permitting authority in over water rights applies to surface waters and waters flowing through known and definite channels. And so what that means is there's certain circumstances where there's certain waters that are treated as surface water, even if they're below the surface of the ground, if that makes sense. And the reason is they're like, it's essentially part of the river. It's so closely connected. And so that term is also referred to as a subterranean stream. There are a lot of shallow groundwater wells along the Russian River that are kind of deemed to be diverting surface water. And so if you have a shallow well and you have a question over whether it is percolating groundwater, which is not part of the regulation, or surface water, which is from the river, please contact us. It is fairly site specific. And so I think we will check our records and see if a determination has been made in the past at that location. Yeah, I'd say contact us if you have a specific question about a subterranean stream.
All right, excellent. Well, that concludes our question and answer session. Like I said, we did get some questions that are more specific to a particular situation on the ground or a particular water right holder, and we will get back to you with those specific answers. In addition, like I mentioned, we're going to have this recording of this webinar posted on our website under the Russian River Drought webpage, as well as the State Board's drought webpage. I just want to say just a few quick concluding remarks. Thank you everybody for attending today's workshop. You know, we do find ourselves in this extreme drought emergency, and these exceptionally dry conditions have made this necessary that we have these emergency regulations. And now we're in this process of enforcing curtailment orders. We do understand, I think, you know, Robert, you said it really well. There's so much going on right now for the diverters in the Russian River watershed. As a Sonoma County native, I understand what is going on in the watershed right now, the time of year that all the growers are in. Also with the kids going back to school and with COVID, and there's just really been a lot of challenges. We hope that this has been helpful for you to give you some resources to help you complete your immediate response to these curtailment orders. We have been really pleased so far with the folks that have responded, with the folks that are complying. And so be looking for the recording of today's workshop in the next several days. And I want to thank again everybody for attending, and for staff in all parts of my branch today coming together to provide this workshop. Thank you.
Have a good weekend, everyone.